Demand. Markets are where goods and services are bought and sold. A market is anywhere buyers and sellers can exchange goods or services. Submarkets are smaller markets that make up a market. For example, the labour market is made up of lots of submarkets. For instance, the market for teachers, engineers and doctors. The price charged for and quantity sold of each good or service are determined by the levels of demand and supply in a market. The levels of demand and supply in a market are shown using diagrams. These diagrams demonstrate the price level and quantity demanded/supplied of goods or services. Demand for goods or services is different at different prices. Demand is the quantity of a good service or service that consumers are willing and able to buy at a given price at a particular time. The demand curve shows the relationship between price and the quantity demanded. At any given point along the curve, it shows the quantity of the good or service that would be bought at a particular price. So you can see an example on the screen of a demand curve. You can see at price PE, the quantity QE is demanded. A decrease in price from PE to P1 causes an extension in demand. It rises from QE to Q1. An increase in price from PE to P2 causes a contraction in demand. It falls from QE to Q2. So movement along the demand curve is caused by changes in price. I'll repeat that again because it's very important. Movement along the demand curve is caused by changes in price. Demand curves usually slope downwards. This means that the higher the price charged for a good, the lower the quantity demanded, as shown by the diagram. In general, consumers aim to pay the lowest price possible for goods and services. As prices increase, more consumers are willing and able to purchase a good or service. So, lower prices means higher demand. The relationship between price and quantity demanded can also be explained using the law of diminishing marginal utility and the income and substitution effects. Income effect. Assuming a fixed level of income, the income effect means that as price falls, the amount that consumers can buy with their income increases, and so demand increases. Whilst the substitution effect is when there's a fall in the price of a good, that makes it relatively cheaper than other goods, so consumers will increase demand for the cheaper good and reduce demand for the more expensive good. Changes in demand cause a shift in the demand curve. A demand curve moves to the left, for example, from D to D1, when there's a decrease in the amount demanded at every price. A demand curve will shift to the right, conversely, when there is an increase in the amount demanded at every price. There are lots of factors that can cause a shift in the demand curve. Changes in taste and fashion can cause demand curves to shift to the right if something is popular, and to the left when it is out of fashion. Changes to people's real income, the amount of goods or services that a consumer can afford to purchase with their income, can affect the demand for different types of goods differently. Normal goods, for example DVDs, are those which people will demand more of if their real income increases. This means that a rise in real income causes the demand curve to shift to the right. People want to buy more of the good at each price level. Inferior goods, for example cheap clothing, are those which people demand less of if their real income increases. This means that a rise in real income causes the demand curve to shift to the left. People demand less at each price level since they'll often switch to more expensive goods instead. Finally, we can talk about a more equal distribution of income. In other words, a reduction in the difference between the incomes of rich and poor people. A more equal distribution of income may cause the demand curve for luxury goods such as sports cars to shift to the left, and the demand curve for other items to shift to the right. This is because there'll be fewer really rich people who can afford luxury cars and more people who can afford everyday items. Changes in demand in one market can affect demand in other markets. Some markets are interrelated, which means that changes in one market affect a related market. Substitute goods are those which are alternatives to each other, for example, beef and lamb. An increase in the price of one good will decrease the demand for it and increase the demand for its substitutes. This is also known as competitive demand. Complementary goods are those goods that are often used together, so they're in joint demand, for example, strawberries and cream. If the price of strawberries increases, demand for them will decrease along with the demand for cream. The introduction of a new product may cause the demand curve to shift to the left for goods that are substitutes for the new product and to the right for the goods that are complementary to it. Derived demand is the demand for a good or a factor of a product used in making another good or service. For example, an increase in demand for fencing will lead to an increased derived demand for wood. Some goods have more than one use. For instance, oil can be used to make plastics or for fuel. We call this composite demand. This means changes in the demand curve for fuel could lead to changes in the demand curve for plastics.